Welcome to today's episode of Conversations with Karen and Kat. I'm Karen Scott Green,
And I'm Kat Hardrick.
and we have the honor to be sitting here today with Representative Ruwa Romman. And Representative Romman was born in Jordan, and she is the granddaughter of Palestinian refugees. Her family moved to Georgia when she was 7 years old. Ruwa graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Politics from Oglethorpe University in 2015 and a Master's in Public Policy from the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown University in 2019. Ooh, you are a scholar, ma'am.
That's right.
So, and a little bit more about Rua is that in 2020, she leveraged her platform to inform thousands of Georgians how to get involved in the 2020 elections. She worked as a field organizer for Asian American Advocacy Fund. She helped establish the Georgia Volunteer Hub and to train the influx of Georgia and national volunteers while connecting them to local Georgia organizations. Rua is an organizer, a policy analyst, management specialist, and she works to empower communities and everyday people to become more civically engaged. And she represents Georgia House District 97. Thank you, Representative.
Thanks for having me.
We
Excited to be on.
You are a busy woman. We appreciate you for making time to come and sit with us and talk about the state of politics in Georgia. Uh, Before we get into that, I did not know that you were of Palestinian descent. Can you offer what's your insight on what's going on in Gaza right now? Just your personal insights.
Yeah. So yes, I am Palestinian on both sides of my family. So my family was exiled from their homes in 48 and 67.
Mm,
They haven't been since. I've now lost three of my grandparents without them ever getting to see their homes again.
mm,
In terms of Gaza, I firmly believe that what we are seeing is an ongoing genocide, unfortunately. And I know that that's hard for a lot of people to hear, but the reality of the situation is that there is intentional mass starvation of people. Um, a lot of the elected officials in Israel have expressed intent. We are now seeing preparations for quote unquote an evacuation of women and children, but not men, which really harkens back to the dark times of Serbia and the Serbian
mhm.
genocide. So, I don't think, it's an awful situation. I actually don't think I can fully do it justice in a little bit.
Okay.
Um, but it is definitely dire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, because I've I've been trying to wrap my head around exactly. I know I can't grasp the scope of everything that's going on, but just trying to get an understanding. Because you see the news clips, you see what's happening on social media, people giving their direct accounts of what's going on,
Mhm.
and and just being able to sit and listen and learn. Because
Yeah,
I think often people are given opinions
right.
without really
Right.
listening and hearing from folks who are actually impacted and by what's going on in Gaza.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Yeah, and being the only elected Palestinian both in the state and much of the southeast, I've gotten a lot of requests from people like, can you help me get my family out of Gaza? Can you help me get food into my family in Gaza? Today we lost this many family members in Gaza, so it's just been a time of extreme loss for the community.
Yeah, I really wish the fighting would come to an end.
Yeah,
I'm praying for you and your family and everybody
Yeah.
thank you.
involved. No one should lose their lives, and um, hate of any kind is not a good thing.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, throughout history, there's been so many people with hate in their hearts for a race of people, a gender of people,
yeah,
um, you know, poor capitalism. If you're poor, then you're trash. Just it's horrible. It's horrible, and I really just wish people will respect that we're all human beings and we have the right to live in peace and have
Yeah.
access to a great quality of life, just like any other human being. So my heart goes out to you and your family and everyone involved.
Thank you.
For the rest of the world who wants to do something because they're watching this going on, are
Yeah.
there any organizations that you could recommend that we become involved with or that we follow or donate to?
Yeah, PCRF has done a great job in terms of providing medical care for children. It's the Palestinian Children Relief Fund. I still praise UNRWA, UNWRA, even though our government has chosen to defund UNRWA. A lot of other countries have stepped up for that. So folks can support them. They are the only organization with infrastructure capable of handling what's happening in Gaza. I also tell people the reality is that this comes down to policy. This is one of the few that the executive branch does have unilateral control over the situation. So I urge people to reach out to their state representatives and senators, to reach out to their members of Congress, to reach out to the White House, kind of like upward pressure, right? Apply that upward pressure. Reach out to your members of Congress. Tell them you want this to end. Ask them to pressure the White House to make this end. Recently we had, I think it was like over 50 Democrats sign a letter to the White House asking them to condition weapons to Israel. That upward pressure really matters.
And so those organizations, again, it was UNRWA?
Yeah, UNRWA and PCRF. Palestinian Children Relief Fund.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I will make sure that when we post this, that information is included in in the bio, in the information about this episode, so that folks can donate. Because oftentimes we see things and we're just like, what can I do? I'm one person. What can I do? Because we're all impacted when we see it. Well, if you are a feeling human being, you're impacted when you see it.
Exactly.
That part.
Exactly.
So with that, I want to ask you, what's the deeds going on under the Capitol? What's going on in Georgia? What are
so much is going on in Georgia. I'll start with some of the good stuff. So we fully funded Hope this term for the first time, I think, in over 10 years, which is great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We did have some homestead exemption bills that passed. I remind folks that we do have a referendum on the ballot for that. So you will get a chance to vote for that on the May ballot.
Okay.
There's pros and cons to that, right? It might reduce your taxes by about $20 to $50 a month on your home. But it does mean that our school system does lose out on revenue. So folks are just gonna have to kind of, weigh pros and cons on, you get a little bit of a tax relief, but our schools will lose out on a lot. So that was kind of a mixed bag, I guess. We passed a bill that would cover PTSD for first responders.
Okay.
Of identification, treatment, things like that to prevent burnout of first responders. We passed a bill to I actually got a bill passed in the House. It stalled in the Senate, but it would have designated EMS as an essential service. So we're going to be working on that next year, hopefully. So I feel like,
now, EMS, would that be emergency medical services?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So because law enforcement and fire have been around since 1800s, like a long time, they are designated as essential. EMS came along in the 70s, right? It really became a thing in the 70s. And so it never got a chance to be designated as essential. And it wasn't, we just need to kind of fix that gap. So it was, I would say like 85% of stuff that we worked on were things that a lot of us agreed on. We did a lot of like various scan type bills to cover like mammograms and to cover certain health related things. We did some student loan forgiveness for certain kinds of healthcare providers. So there was a lot of good stuff. Unfortunately, the speaker's mental health bill did stall in the Senate, which was really shocking to me, to be quite honest.
Who was against that?
A bunch of senators that thought it's like this. I don't know. There was a lot of conspiracies in the Senate, to be quite honest with you. I don't know how to explain the Senate anymore. They kind of do their own thing on that side of the hallway. But actually, by the end of session on Sine Die, I kept just going around to people like, look, we're not constitutionally required to have a Senate. Like, You actually don't need a constitutional amendment to get rid of it. And this is true. I did actually ask the clerk about this. It is true. So there is a minimum number of state house reps required that we need to have, but there is only a maximum number of state senators, meaning there is no minimum number of state senators that we need to have. So we could just reduce that number to 0.
Wow.
Still a bicameral state. That was just like
Yeah.
a lot of
That
frustration.
went over like a lead balloon.
Oh, no, you would be surprised how many people in the House were getting really, really excited about it, and even some senators by the end of the day.
Okay.
Like, it was really frustrating. Unfortunately, in terms of some bad things that have passed that the governor has signed, House Bill 1105, frankly, to me, legalizes discrimination. What it does, it says that law enforcement is required to check the citizenship status of people that they hold. They can hold people for 48 hours until they prove their citizenship status. So if you're traveling without your passport or whatever, you could be held for 48 hours. They're not going to be holding people that don't look like us. I'm just going to be honest. And it kind of creates a backdoor quota system, to be quite frank, because it says, Democrats you keep hearing how Democrats want to defund the police, but this is actually a defund the police bill. If they do not meet these requirements, law enforcement offices do lose their funding.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's pretty bad. Senate Bill 63 was also signed into law by the governor. This would end the ability for people to pay bail for others. The only exception to that is bail bondsmen. So if you're part of a church, for example, that will try to do bail people out, for example, particularly parents, those who are in need, any of that. Now churches and individuals are limited to bailing out 3 people per year. So it is awful. They're getting away with it because they're saying this is because of the Cop City protesters, but the reality of the situation is that it's not only going to impact protesters, it's also going to impact everyday people who got caught up in the system. Which is, by the way, why my philosophy is that we should never allow any of us to be targeted, because it always impacts all of us.
It always impacts all of us. You're right.
Always. So yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag of a year, some pros, some cons, and the hope is that we just keep trying to stop as many bad bills as possible, and if and when we take the majority, that we start to work on some good stuff.
I always ask this question, though. I know you guys go up there. How often are your constituents involved? How can they contact their local leaders and be informed about these bills? Because every average day person is not familiar with what's going on under the dome, let alone in their immediate community. So what can we do to help get people more involved?
So first and foremost, people can subscribe to our newsletters. Most of my colleagues and I do have newsletters that we send out pretty regularly, especially during session. Session for us is January through the end of March. So that is usually when session happens. You can follow your favorite newspaper, or you could just hear directly from your representative and subscribe to their newsletter. You can come down to the Gold Dome. It's the People's House. It's called the People's House for a reason. I love when people come down and visit me. You can email us, you can call us, you can reach out to us in so many different ways. Please be patient. State representatives, unlike members of Congress, don't have entire teams of staff. If we're lucky, we might be able to afford to hire one person in addition to our admin. So if we don't respond to you right away, it's not because we're ignoring you or we don't care. It's just that it takes us some time to get through all the emails.
And you have a shared admin. Look, you have a shared admin.
Between 8 of us. Yeah, when I say an admin, 8 of us in a suite share a single admin.
That's right.
And in Georgia, Georgia does not have a full-time legislature.
Yes.
And so our representatives and our senators serve from January halfway through March, and almost everyone works a full-time job. They have an occupation other than being a senator or being a member of the House of Representatives. So, with that, please be patient, because these folks have full-time jobs.
Right.
We try really hard, I promise.
It is a servant's job. You are here to serve, and you're not getting paid. I mean, you get a salary, but trust me, it's not a lot, right? You can't live correct. So I just had a conversation with somebody about that, saying that, the Senate and how they get paid. I'm like, no.
We're not. Yeah, you'd be surprised.
No, you don't. So same thing. I mean, with mayors and city council, depending upon how big your city is, you don't get a lot of salary. So you're doing it because you love serving your community.
Yep.
and trying to make a difference. So we like to remind people that, especially it's election season right now,
Yep.
really look into what's going on in your community. So when you're super busy, I just want to pop a little fun. You know, tell us some of the stuff you like doing in your spare time, Ruwa, because I know you have you a happening lady.
Hi. So I enjoy running very slowly is what I call it, because it's a little faster than jogging. It's a little slower than normal running, but it's very meditative for me. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan, so I love to just kind of put on some music
Okay.
and kind of zone out a little bit. And to
Won't
be
hold that against you.
fan, I want to be clear. I've been a fan since I was 13, right? Like this is something I grew up with. This is not like a new fad. This is not
Okay.
like whatever. You know, I think sometimes people forget that you know, she
That
was
she's been around for a long time.
long time, and we're like the same age, so I feel like just generationally wise we're the same place. But so I enjoy doing that a lot, and I love reading. I love losing myself in a good book. You know, I remember post session just trying to so session actually the last 3 weeks of session were the first 3 weeks of Ramadan. So session didn't feel like it was over for me until Ramadan was also over. And so I that last week of Ramadan after session, I just spent it. I mean, I read like I think I was at a book a day. Like I just was doing nothing but
Oh
read.
wow.
Because I missed reading so much, and it was just a good way for me to. It's kind of like when you're on an adrenaline rush and you're trying to come down to an adrenaline rush. So I was doing that.
Yeah.
What was
I
your
like.
last good read?
Oh,
Ooh, my last good read. I actually, what did I read? Now I see when people ask me, I don't remember. Oh, my husband and I actually read a book together called Enter Ghost. Speaking of being Palestinian, so it's beautifully written. What it does, it's about this woman who is Palestinian, lives in the UK, ended up going back to the West Bank to help out a theater group. But the way the book is written, it's really cool because it like steps in and out of like theater language as the story goes. It's just really fascinating. And it's fiction. It was really moving, and I really, really liked it.
Enter Ghost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Yeah,
all right. So now what's on your nightstand right now?
I'm gonna have to. So Mehdi Hassan was an anchor on MSNBC,
Yes.
and I want to make sure I get the book title right because it's about like arguing. But when every argument is like the name of the book, The Art of Debating, Persuading, and Public Speaking.
Oh, now
Yeah.
what's that book? I need that book. What is it?
Write that down. What was the name again?
Mehdi Hassan, Mehdi, last name Hassan, Hasan, and it's When Every Argument.
Win every argument. Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all see, we writing that stuff down, family.
That's next on my list for sure.
Okay. All right.
What?
What's that cat?
When everyone.
No, when every
argument.
Oh, win every argument. Yes.
I think my 17-year-old, almost 18-year-old must have read that book.
My mom would probably say the same thing. She'd be like, "Was this book written about you?" And then somebody told me to read Fourth Wing, and it finally came available in my library, and so I like ran through that. It's like one of those like dragons and whatever type.
Oh yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'll
read everything. I'll read everything. I'll literally read everything.
Because that is an eclectic array of topics that that you were talking about. So that's cool. Is that what you do for your mental health, for you to just kind of unwind?
Yeah. It depends on the season, honestly. I mean, there are times where all I want to do is just sit in front of the TV. There are times where I just feel really productive and I'm like, I want to read or I want to, go outside or I want to run. It really depends on the season. But yeah, reading has been the most consistent love of my life, I guess, because I learned English through reading for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of times, especially up until about 5 years ago, I would mispronounce words. So, for example, I didn't realize that it's colonel instead of colonel. Words.
English.
Yeah. So there's a lot of
rules. Yeah, funny rules.
And every once in a while, it'll sneak back up on me.
Yeah. I teach English as a foreign language, and when you show people, we only have so many letters, but we have way more sounds. And when you start
Yep.
doubling up 2 letters or 3 letters and the silent, and you're like, okay, wait a minute. So
Exactly.
it's interesting because we take advantage of it. It's our native tongue. Same
Yep.
thing, vice versa, when you learn somebody else's language. But that is true. You always get somebody to read. I'm studying a few other languages, and they always tell me to read children's books and listen to the movies and the songs because I love music. So listen to the songs and read a lot of books. I actually joined a book club, like a Spanish book club at one point. So then that way it'll help you learn how to read in Spanish when you join a book club.
Now,
You know, you
okay.
had that
Yep.
conversation. So that's good. I like to let people see the different side of our elected officials because guess what? While you out there fighting the fight, you still a human being. You still somebody's
Yes.
mama. You still somebody's
Yep.
wife. You still somebody's daughter. You know what I'm saying? And we need to show respect to people that are doing the fight because it's not easy doing what you're doing. It's a huge sacrifice. So
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're doing. And so my
I'm
question,
grateful for the opportunity. So, but go ahead.
yeah. With your time being elected,
Mhm.
what have you learned that you didn't know before you got elected?
I think to some extent I had a feeling about this, but it really is so true that at the end of the day, we're people. And so much of what passes and doesn't pass is based on people's relationships.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Even I think honestly that is more important than even party affiliation. If you are good, and when I say good, I'm talking about like if you're respectful to your colleagues. At the end of the day, this is a workplace for us, right? We're going to disagree. We're going to go on the campaign trail. We're going to, throw some punches, all that kind of stuff. But if face to face you are cordial and respectful to your colleagues, that goes such a long way. I have seen bills live and die because of that. I have seen bills live and die because somebody is unkind or somebody is
Mm.
rude or somebody is being unfairly antagonistic. And to be clear, you can go watch my House floor speeches. I have never pulled a punch. I've never pulled a punch about any issue. I've spoken out anytime there was time for me to speak or a slot for me to speak. I took that opportunity because I really do care about the values that I ran on. And I did. I ran to put public service back into politics, and that includes both doing the constituent services and fighting the good fight on the House floor.
Right.
So I never pulled a punch, but when you hear my speeches, I try really, really, really hard to focus on the substance of the bills. I try really hard to focus on values, on messaging, but I try really hard to be cordial to my colleagues as much as possible, when appropriate, because I feel like it's kind of like when you go to the office, right? Imagine you work in a workplace, and if all you do is you're just constantly being mean to people, it makes the hard projects that much harder. But if
Right.
you're able to work well with others, you can get far, even on those very difficult projects and decisions that you have to make.
When you
Absolutely.
said work well with others, girl, the only thing I can hear is your elementary school teaching, showing you how you
Totally.
have to work well with others. And here it is,
Mhm.
10 years later, you got to work well with others.
That
And
was a whole category on our report cards.
Right.
Elementary school works well with others.
And to be clear, I am pretty sure there are colleagues of mine who, if they could, would probably throw me in jail at this point. Like, it's fine, right? Like, they probably disagree with me on so many things, they can't handle it. But when we enter that chamber, I think that, at least in the House, we maintain a level of professionalism that has made it possible for us to focus on getting the work done and, frankly, have really honest, open, and difficult conversations about why some of the bills we're opposing, why we're opposing them.
Yeah.
And there has to be a level at all times. There has to Governmental bodies should always maintain a level of decorum. We can agree to disagree, and you can espouse your views as to why you think the bill is wrong or this shouldn't pass or whatever, or your views on this particular point. But when we get to the point that on the Senate floor, on the floor of the House of Representatives, folks are shouting at
Hmm.
one another, calling the
Person's name.
executive person's
Yep.
names,
Yep.
and not being truthful and honest and forthcoming in information. I you you lose credibility.
Yep.
You
And I
absolutely lose credibility, and it turns off the voters.
Exactly. I actually, so two things. Well, one thing that I want to add a bit of like an addendum.
Mhm.
First and foremost, I actually do think that negativity and even negative campaigning does more to suppress turnout than anything. I actually don't think negative campaigning works. I think it actually causes people to turn away from the process.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Caveat I want to add is for me in particular, being in these spaces, and I'm sure as Black women, y'all know this, when you're in these spaces, whether on purpose or not, there's an element of dehumanization that we kind of all live with, right? Like, and it's not just microaggressions, it's straight up ignorance from folks, right?
Yes.
And as a state representative, one thing I've kind of had to learn to do is just put on like an extra layer of just poker face, like,
Mhm.
and I try really hard to treat people as potential friends rather than potential enemies. So I
Mhm.
try really hard to give somebody the benefit of the doubt that if they say something unkind or hateful related to my identity, that
Mhm.
comes from a place of ignorance. Now, if that place of ignorance is militant ignorance and hate and whatever, then yeah, we can't speak to each other anymore, right? Like, sorry, my cat is blind and she doesn't understand.
Ah!
Oh, look at
Like, sorry, she's like clawing at me because she can't see. But so I tell people that like treat people as potential allies always,
Mhm.
because you never know who you end up as a friend.
It's
But
true.
sometimes if somebody doesn't see you as a human being, you're just gonna have to cut your losses. And I have been very lucky in that the overwhelming majority of people in the house with me have not fallen into that category.
That's beautiful.
that's
That's
very
beautiful. Because when if I don't see your humanness, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And we're supposed to be engaging in dialogue, conversation, trying to move the needle a little bit further. We when when you don't see me as human, you don't see my humanness, you don't see my humanity, where
Correct.
do we go from there? We can't have a serious conversation.
Yep. You
yeah.
can't. And not only can you not have a serious conversation, but also it's 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 like a different level of humiliation, right? Because I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not embarrassed of who I am, but it's sort of one of those situations of like, why am I wasting my like not only am I wasting my time trying to talk to you, but like clearly there's no respect here. So,
Absolutely.
that's on you, not on me.
That's what I was
Absolutely.
just about to say. It's not about you liking me.
Yep.
I'm here to do the work for the people, but we
Yep.
have to have some level of respect
Mhm.
so that we can get the work done.
Yep.
And negative banter is just a distraction.
Correct.
It's a distraction from the process,
Mhm.
and it creates a distraction for our voters, the
Yep.
people who all these laws impact. And
Yep.
I agree with you. And I know when Karen and I both ran, no one was spitting out negative stuff. And
Yep.
I always, someone shared with me, it's either Nehemiah 6:3 or 3:6, and I paraphrase, where I'm not going to stop doing God's work to come down and entertain y'all foolishness. That's my paraphrasing of that. That's how
Yeah,
that message spoke to me.
exactly.
And if we don't stay focused on what it is that we're really trying to do, the good, making solutions and helping people, and get drawn over here with all of that ugliness and
Mhm.
negativity, then we're never going to get anywhere. And that's, to me, that's what I see across the board. And I cannot stand it. It's some people who sit on the sidelines waiting
For
for
the
somebody to say,
negativity. Yes.
yes. They
Exactly.
like got popcorn and everything. Oh, it's election season. Let me get my
Yes.
popcorn, and I can't wait to
Waiting
see.
for the drama.
Yep.
Right, right. And
Waiting for the drama.
when you go above that and you don't participate, oh, you should say no, because my name is on that ballot.
Yep.
People see me, not anybody else. They see me, and I want them to see me as a woman who is going to do the work for the people and not get caught up in all those shenanigans. Like you
Yep.
said, every time you may have to stand up and say something, but I'm not responding to any of that foolishness, especially if it's something
Yeah.
Far
just,
out there.
yeah,
Just out.
yeah,
And
Yep.
yeah.
I don't know how we right the ship at
Mhm.
this point in American politics,
Yeah.
because everyone has retreated to their own corners in American politics, on the left and on the right.
Yep.
to, in the days of like a Tip Tip O'Neill, right, when he was in Congress, uh,
Mhm.
he and, like a Tip O'Neill, John McCain,
Mhm.
Ted Kennedy, like they were different parties, but they could come
Right.
together.
Mhm.
We could say, okay, the sky is blue. We both believe that the sky is blue, and
Yep.
we can put forth this bill that says the sky is blue.
Yep.
Well, now it's, oh, it's it's
Wedgwood blue.
it's
Yep.
It's
just, and there's no kind of medium, even on topics that used to be middle of the road, that everyone could agree on, that this was in everyone's best interest. And I don't know how we right that ship, because we've gone so far off course in
Mhm.
American politics, just in general, on the left and on the right. Like, how do
Yeah.
we, I don't know the answer to that. How do we bring it back around, or if that's even possible
Yeah.
at this, like, are we going to have to do a whole purge of current politicians and get new people in before? And I'm speaking, mainly on the national scene, but some state legislatures are are very toxic as well.
I actually think that this is the time to lean in, not out.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this because so 40% of people that volunteered on my campaign. So I ran for the first time in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
40% of the people who ever volunteered on my campaign had never done political work before, ever. And the thing they told me over and over again is that by learning the process, they realize that they actually have more influence on it than they thought.
Okay.
And so, what I tell people is actually lean in. I actually think our algorithms are designed to create like such a tailored world for each of us that that's not how reality functions. We
Yeah.
live in a shared world. And we've been talking a lot about the college protests recently,
Mhm.
and I remember I actually got texts from people about the Emory protest on Thursday morning, and I thought, you know what? One, people are telling me that these are outside agitators, and they're telling me that they don't, they brought this on themselves. So I was like, I could literally just physically go down and see it for myself, and that's what I did. Right? I
Right.
physically went down to the campus to see for myself rather than relying on so and so to tell me how it is. Does that mean we have that opportunity for every issue? No.
So,
But I
yeah.
feel like the more people get involved, the more connected they are, the less this propaganda works on each of us, because then we can say, I live in the real world. I saw this with my own eyes. It's not
Yeah.
true. And I think we have a responsibility to do that, right? Like I actually think that we as human beings, like, sure, if we got rid of every politician tomorrow and started from scratch and voted new people in, that's not going to fix the problem, because politicians are also susceptible to social
Yeah.
media. You think that Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't have an algorithm that's constantly
Oh,
feeding her nonsense?
absolutely.
You don't,
Absolutely.
like that's the reality situation. And so if people spent more time being like, hey, let me go verify this for myself, let me call my friend who's directly impacted by this to see what they think about this, that goes a really long way. And I think is how we right this ship, which I think is possible to right. This is the time to dig in. And one last thing I want to say is voting is not the only tool in our toolbox, but it is an important one. And I really do think that if everybody voted, our electoral politics would look very different, because we would spend so much less time, energy, and money convincing people just to go to the ballot box, and more time on education, information, all of that kind of stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
That is a powerful word, because you are so right. So much, even when when we ran, so much of our time was focused on,
Voter
just
education.
voter, and telling people, go vote, go
Mhm.
vote, go vote, go vote,
Yep.
because
Yep.
apathy, voter apathy, 2022, and that was an off year as well, but there was a lot of voter apathy, and we knew when we looked at the numbers, people just weren't. There are a lot more registered voters than what came out,
Yep.
and had the registered voters come out like, the numbers were showing, that we could have had, then there would have been a whole different
trajectory, a lot of better
Yeah,
results.
absolutely. A whole different result, but we didn't see that. And so we spend so much of our energy, those of us who are engaged, in just informing people of things like deadlines for voter registration,
Exactly.
deadlines for, when if you've moved, when do you have to do this? And, and just letting people know like the basic information that you
Mhm.
don't even, it's it's very hard to get to the issues because you're still giving them the basic kindergarten level stuff. And I'm
Exactly.
not saying that trying to be,
Right.
um,
Belittle anybody's level of
Oh
intelligence.
no,
no.
but just
No,
giving
it's
them the very basic things like, like someone, I remember talking to someone and they were registered in another county in the state of Georgia, and they thought, well, I'm a registered voter in Georgia, so I should just be able to like show up at the poll, and that's what they did, and they were expressing their frustration to me
Yep.
that they had showed up at a poll. We'll just say they were registered in Liberty County and they had moved, and they thought that they could just show up to a poll
Yep.
in Gwinnett County and just vote.
Yep.
No, it doesn't work.
look. I got one for you. I'm almost embarrassed to say, but somebody said that they were going to go vote online.
Yep. Yep. I
I
think
had
Oh,
I
you,
had people ask I
yeah.
had people ask me that.
and
Yeah.
I'm like,
And these were not 18 and 20-year-olds.
oh
I had a
no.
I had a full grown adult ask me, like
Yeah.
someone in their 50s, 60s asked me, can they vote online?
And to be clear, I think that's us failing voters too, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Mm.
we like imagine if we had same day voter registration, right? Because most of the voter information happens that month leading up to the day that you are the last day that you can vote.
Yeah.
Imagine if we had same day voter registration so that if that one piece that the person saw finally gets them to the polls and they go, oh my God, I'm not registered to vote, or oh my God, my registration is
Yeah.
wrong. We have the technology for that. There's no reason for us not to do that. If we had things like if you
We're off from work for election day.
make election day a holiday is another
Yeah.
huge one. If every time you went to any kind of government office, any of them, DMV, bank, you name it, and there was like a little thing about voting there to remind you about think
On
about
your water bill.
on your water bill, because guess what? We vote for the Public Service Commission.
Yeah.
And although I don't know if they do water utilities just yet, but maybe our electric bill, right? Like imagine if the PSC was required to send out a voting notice that they're up for reelection. Imagine if during trash pickup, there was a little notice about your municipal elections, or if you went grocery shopping, there was a little like informational about like, here's what government is actually responsible for when it comes to the cost of your food.
Right.
I mean, obviously some of this stuff is like way out there. Like, I don't know if it would work the best way, but at least an understanding of how do we educate people in the things they do day to day. Like gas, for example, I promise you the president does not control your gas prices. We
But
have
a lot of people think so.
policies that could maybe tweak them here or there, but the
Yeah.
president does not control your gas prices.
Are you sure about that? Because I know my pump says, I ain't gonna say no name, but
yeah, I was like, thanks, Joe Biden. So yeah.
right.
I've seen them. But the thing is, and to be clear, I'm not absolving somebody of their responsibility. The reason I care so much about telling people what level of government and which official is specifically responsible for that thing is because I want them to then go and talk to that government official.
Absolutely. Hold them accountable.
Exactly. That's how you help it. But you can't. But if you keep saying like the man or people, or they just don't want us to succeed, like who's they? Be specific. And it's not because I'm being annoying, and it's not because I'm saying that nobody is responsible. I need to know exactly who is responsible, for example, for that pothole outside that won't get fixed, or the trash that's not getting picked up, or my electric bill that's going up, or the fact that, for example, my friend just got, arbitrarily detained by the cops and asked to prove their citizenship because they're a little too brown. Like, who do I hold responsible for those things? Because when then I figure out that answer, I can then come up with a new answer to figure out, okay, what can I do about them, and either get rid of them to get them out of office, give them that feedback so they can change their position, all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I agree with what you just said. I think one of the first steps that our listeners and everyone across the planet If you're in the United States, go to my voter page, mvp.sos.ga.gov. If you're in Georgia, my voter page, secretaryofstate.ga.gov. So you can find out who your elected official is and then start doing your research on what their responsibilities are. So if it's someone that trails back to your street lights, your potholes, your trash pickup, the prices of your grocery stores, you would know if this is at a federal level or a local level and so forth. So go to your voters page, make sure you're registered to vote,
That part.
that part,
Yep.
and then take everybody who's 17 and a half and older and go
Mhm.
register to vote. And like our House representative said, lean in, get involved, because nothing's going to change if you're waiting on it. You need to be the change you want to see.
You need to be the catalyst. You need to be that spark.
Yes.
If you feel like if things in your city aren't being run right, you need to start going to your city hall meetings. If things in your county aren't being run right, you need to start going to your county commission meetings.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel things at the state legislature aren't going right, talk to your representatives. In Georgia, we have a bicameral house. We have a House of Representatives and we have a Senate. Find out who your senators are. Find out who your representative is
Yeah.
and call them up, email them. And
Yep.
while we're at it, we're going to give out Rua's information. You can reach her via email at info@Rua, the number 4, Georgia.com. That's RUWA, the number 4, Georgia.com. And you can reach her at her website, which is the same as her email address, which is ruaforgeorgia.com. So
Yep.
if you are in Georgia and you want information about what's going on under the Gold Dome, reach out to Rua, reach out to whoever your state representative is. And for most state representatives that I have contact with, they will, even if they don't represent your district, they will still talk to you about things. And often, if there's a piece of legislation that you're interested in or that you want to speak against or whatever, you can talk to anyone in that in that uh, in that body, in that legislative body, about that piece of legislation. So get involved and
And
move.
Georgia has a legislative website.
Mhm.
Go to the website. If you don't go to my voters page, you can go to your state's legislative website. Go to the World Wide Web and type in your state and your legislative and find out what that website is. And then you can start looking at all of the bills. I know Georgia records their sessions, correct, for the
Yeah.
public.
Yep.
And so I don't know if every state does that, probably so. But you can look at every meeting. You can go back and look at Rua doing her thing and anybody else. And then you can ask those questions and get involved. We have to get involved. That's why Karen and I ran. That's why Rua ran. And that's why we'll continue to fight to spread information, because if you don't like it, you either run and or get involved. The
Yep.
best way you know
Right.
how. So,
Exactly.
Because I believe that if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. If
Mhm.
you don't vote, you have no right to complain.
Yep.
and if you don't vote, go start a GoFundMe and put Conversations with Karen the Cat and give all your tax dollars to us if you don't care where your tax dollars going. It's not refundable, folks. It's not refundable. We're going to get good use. Because I always say it's your tax dollars. And if you don't care where your money's going, then give it to us. Give it to me. I know what I can do with it.
Because essentially that's what it's about.
That's right.
When Representative Rua and her colleagues are under the Gold Dome, they're deciding how to spend your money.
What's
Yep.
that budget?
When we send people to Congress, to DC, they're deciding how to spend your money.
What's that budget?
26 billion, I think, this year.
Is that B as in boy, Boston?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's our surplus?
15 billion.
So 25 minus what?
15.
And how much we spending?
26 billion. But here's the thing. This is actually, I know this sounds like, oh, of course a Democrat would say that, but it's true. We're actually not spending enough money. We are refusing to expand Medicaid, which actually would save people money in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
$15 billion surplus that is just sitting, it's literally just sitting there, means that pre-K is not fully funded. It means that, we know that classroom sizes are too big right now.
Yes.
We've given teachers raises. It's still not enough to retain them, which means classroom sizes are getting bigger as more teachers leave. And as more teachers leave and classroom sizes get bigger, it becomes even harder. So then more teachers leave, and it's like this terrible cycle. Let's also not forget that we have been underfunding education for 10 years. So yes, that is a big number. It's a huge number. It's half our budget. But the reality is that we're trying to make up for 10 years worth of spending, and keeping all of it in a bank account is the equivalent of saying, I've got a ton of money in my savings, but none of your bills are getting paid.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes
That's a great analogy.
all the development we have. I know in the city in which I live in, we got like 3 coming. And where are these kids going to go to school?
Yep.
And so if you already have a class that's over 30-something kids in a classroom, for our great teachers, because we love teachers. Next week is Teacher Appreciation Week. Teachers. Yeah. And now we're going to overburden them. And teachers are leaving, going to other school districts. And we're trying to fight for our community. Me and Karen love our community. We could move, but we're not. We're fighting for our kids in our schools and our community. And it don't get me going about that. Register, mentor, go vote, and help them spend money on our education, because our public schools are great. They're doing a good job. Can they improve? Absolutely. But it takes us to do that. Our kids deserve us to help them have a great quality, safe quality of education. Girl, let me get off my soapbox. we got $15 million, and we're doing it with it for education.
And that's 15 with the B. That's $1 billion with the B.
Medicine, Medicaid. Is it? Can y'all help with that? No.
With what?
Prescriptions. No, that's Medicaid.
So what I tell people is that the Medicaid expansion thing, we focus on it so much because it has other downward effects, right? Right now, Georgia is the worst. It ranks literally dead last in the country for healthcare. We also pay a lot in premiums. And the reason, what I explain to people is that when you have a public option, it forces these corporations to compete with that public option. So they actually reduce their costs, right? Like your premiums at least go down a little bit because they're literally competing in the market with a public option. The other thing is that with a public option, there's inherently more people insured by the federal government, which means they can go to the negotiating table with a better position, because then they can say, we cover like 50 million people, 100 million people. We need you to bring down your prescription prices, or we're just not paying for it. And suddenly that company is losing out on 50 million customers because they're trying to price gouge you. And so, and the other thing is that overhead costs for things like Medicaid, unlike private insurance, is like 2.5 cents on the dollar. With private insurance, it's 25 cents on the dollar because, they need to pay their shareholders and their CEOs, and they need to pay for that yacht, and they need to pay for whatever. So yes, there are absolutely bureaucratic issues with government. Don't get me wrong. There's so much we can fix from a customer service perspective, but the reality is that it costs us less money and we get so much more out of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Girl, you left us with a bunch of nuggets. I know we got to get off of this thing because we could talk. We got to bring you back.
No, but thank you, Ruwa, for making time to speak with us.
Yeah,
we've been trying to get you on for a while, so it finally worked out.
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you for being on our love seat, girl. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Our love seat. We got to get you a T-shirt.
Please, I'll always wear it. Thank you.
And to our listeners, we want to thank you for joining us on this episode of Conversations with Karen and Kat.
Well, we are impacting the world one conversation at a time.